John, there's a new movie out that is ruffling lots of feathers and apparently selling a lot of tickets. But I'm talking, of course, about Matt Walsh's new film, Am I Racist?, which is sort of a documentary, mockumentary in kind of the Borat vein.
Being a white, straight, cisgender man is the top of the pile.
I'm on the top of the pile. That's me. Am I racist?
I would really appreciate it if you left.
I'm trying to learn. I'm on this journey.
Can you please leave?
An interesting conversation that has erupted around it is whether it's ever okay to use deception for something like this. So in this film, Matt Walsh kind of went undercover, might be too strong of a word. He changed his hair and dressed kind of goofy and pretended to be a person who was on a journey to become a DEI specialist. And then he interviewed lots and lots of people and introduced himself as Matt. As far as I know, he might have even introduced himself as his last name as well. And most of the people he interacted with didn't know who he was. And so he went through the movie that way and kind of allowed people to speak for themselves and then made this documentary about it, which I'm assuming just kind of showcases the ridiculousness of this whole DEI infrastructure movement. But a lot of people have been asking this question, like, was that okay that he wasn't upfront about what he was doing and his actual aim? So where do you come down on this?
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I would probably not liken this to Borat. And the reason is because I think we went through this phase in the 90s of Seinfeld and Borat and, the Johnny Knoxville series, which had a title of a donkey, where they're not really tackling anything serious and they're not really trying to communicate anything serious. And that's different. There is a good bit of mocking, barely under the surface of the Matt Walsh films. You might remember the Am I a Woman documentary.
What is a woman?
What is a woman? What did I say? Am I a woman? Sorry,
that was. I don't think so, but yeah.
I think some are asking that question, but that's not the what is a woman question. And it's Am I Racist? What is a woman? Which was, at some level, basically allowing people to say what they really believed. And I think in that one as well, he introduced himself as Matt. He did not really say, I'm trying to make a movie where I'm just going to let all of your descriptions of this ideology stand on their own. And you might remember he interviewed serious folks as well, like one of the big critics of the history of gender theory. That's when that segment of the woman documentary talked about Dr. Money and the evil that had been done in the name of that research to this these young twins. He's trying to deal with very serious things. I think the same thing is true here in the Am I a Racist film. Now, to be clear, I've seen clips, I've seen descriptions of it, and there's been a very, very interesting conversation about the tactics on this. Andrew Walker from the Southern Baptist Seminary weighed in and said he had some, lack of comfort about how the tactics that were used. Others weighed in as well about that. So I think the conversation is very interesting for a number of reasons. There is a long history in Christian ethics of talking about, is it ever okay to deceive? And in kind of the name of some greater good. The famous ethical treatment of this is Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who, really wrestled with this, with a situation on the ground with grave and impending danger, at stake. And so there's a number of factors here that have to be brought in. Number one is the level of deception. Number two is the level of risk or threat to actual people. The classic example of if a Nazi soldier comes and knocks on your door and you're hiding Jews, do you tell them the truth or do you lie? There are many who think, no, Christians should never lie for any reason. Bonhoeffer did not come down there on that. He had this real kind of on the ground in what he called the tempest of the living in a letter he wrote to a former seminary student, that faith had to be lived in the real world. And the real world was messy and required hard decisions, including decisions that were the right decisions in his view, but also pricked the conscience. He landed essentially where you tell the truth to those people who deserve the truth. And almost everybody deserves the truth, except in, certain situations. Now, what he did there was justified, misleading. What's not clear is if a documentary on an ideology would meet the criteria of who does or doesn't deserve the truth. And that's been the subject of the debate, which I think has been super interesting and I think has been really helpful. Neil Shimvey has weighed in on this, asking really interesting questions too. And, suddenly now, whether or not you're willing to use this tactic becomes a test of whether you're actually a real follower of Christ in this cultural. I mean, it's just been bizarre, the critiques and just have the conversation. Let the conversation be the conversation. Both, on this issue of race, Neil Shimvey has written the definitive book on critical race theory and critical theory in general. His loyalties are not in question. And I've always been just really intrigued and convinced by Bonhoeffer's idea that, who deserves the truth and kind of the loyalties of your ethics. But there's a lot that needs to be unpacked there.
Yeah. There are definitely moments in the Bible where people use deception and it's considered sinful. And then there's moments where, like in Rahab's case, they use deception and it's considered a blessing or good. And
in fact, she makes the Hall of Faith in Hebrews 11. Remember that? She shows up in there for these actions. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's kind of a point in the camp of Bonhoeffer where it's as much as this sounds like a cop-out, it's probably situationally dependent, but also dependent on your motives and what you're trying to accomplish. I will say, as a reporter, there have been several times in my life where I've entered a situation where I think this is true probably on both sides of the worldview aisle, but it's especially true on the progressive side, where if you show up somewhere as a journalist, people are just generally going to assume that you're with them. So if it's a progressive cause, that's the popular cause. And I'm a young person and I just say I'm a journalist and a member of the media. I know I've interviewed people or attended events where people assumed I was progressive and that I was supportive of whatever they were saying or what I was watching. And I absolutely was not. For example, I did a story for World once a couple years ago about a drag queen story hour. And I showed up at the drag queen story hour and you could tell that everybody kind of thought that, yeah, then I loved this because that's what they're used to. And I let that sit for a while so that I could be in there and listen. I never said anything to make them believe that. I never, falsely claimed that I was in favor of anything. I just let them believe it and then let them say what they were going to say anyway. Eventually, in that case, and in a lot of these cases, I'll ask enough questions where they get mad at me and will tell me to leave. And I think that actually happened in several of these scenes in Matt Walsh's movie too. But as far as I can tell, that's what he did as well, is he let people say what they would say to a person who came up to them and said, teach me about what you do. And aside, he asked if he could film. Sure. And they obviously all said yes. He's got a great legal team. So I'm not sure exactly what the deception was other than him not totally agreeing with everything they said. Yeah. But that to me is pretty low on the level of deception chart.
That's a really important distinction in this ethical, there's a difference between saying something that isn't true and then allowing someone to go down the kind of the road of their own folly in order, to expose it. So I think that's one of the distinctions that needs to be made in this whole calculus. That's a really, really important distinction. Another one is also the level of evil that's been hidden. So we go back to David Daleiden. And by the way, there were conversations about whether this was an okay tactic with live action and with David Daleiden. David Daleiden, of course, famously filming Planned Parenthood execs, offering to create contracts to sell fetal body parts. There was much more deception used there, right? This wasn't a just let them go down their own line. It was a here's who I am, and it wasn't true. Different name, different everything. Same thing is true with live action, where women would call or show up at a clinic with a scenario. Remember, the one scenario was, basically showed up with claiming to be a prostitute with a pimp, a minor prostitute. Do you remember? I think this was in the Midwest somewhere. The guy was actually dressed like a pimp. Like, it was crazy. No one actually dresses like that except Kramer on Seinfeld in that one episode. Like, it's insane, right? And they went for it. But the evil that was being protected and hidden, and what this Planned Parenthood clinic was willing to do, was basically provide cover for trafficking and sex abuse, was such a level of evil, such a level of threat, and so protected and hidden. That's just a different scenario than this. Mm-hmm. So you got the level of deception, you got the level of evil, you got the level of threat. All that plays into it. Now, I do want to bring up one more thing, because you talked about your story, which I think is an interesting example of just showing up, saying I'm part of the press and so on. Bonhoeffer definitely recognized as well the danger to one's own soul for going down this tactical route. And this is something that has to be acknowledged. We tragically have examples. There was the famous leader of the religious sect, the Christian group in Europe, and I'm trying to remember the name. Some people are going to remember it off the top of their heads, and I'm not. Sorry. It's a Roman Catholic guy who dealt with victims of abuse and so on. And since he's died, it's been revealed that he was involved in that. You have examples where Bonhoeffer really talks about the risk, or the calculation that he makes includes the risk to his own soul, that he'll grow to like this too much and embrace it too much, that you'll be desensitized to evil. Mm-hmm. I know a gentleman, I've known him for years, who worked to take down pornography shops in a particular state on the East Coast, and I'll leave it at that. And I asked him this once, like, how did you do this without losing your own soul? And that's a very real risk that has to be. Now, look, going to a DEI meeting, I don't know, sitting down and talking with Robin DiAngelo, you're probably not at risk too much of being actually convinced. Yeah, that is another calculation in this that I think has to be measured.
You're talking about the plot of every undercover cop movie, right? You go undercover and then you start to fall in love with the drug dealer's daughter, and then, you run away together. But no,
maybe not the drug dealer, but there's usually romance in the movies, maybe not romance in real life, but yeah.